a variety of ways that languages can be connected to one another. One important way is by being members of the same language family. Change is a natural process in language, and all languages are always changing. No matter how old you are, during your lifetime you've probably noticed new words and phrases being introduced, or existing ones changing their meaning, and some even falling out of use altogether. Over time, because of things like geographical, cultural, or religious factors, a language can change differently in different places and diverge into separate dialects, then eventually into separate languages. Those separate languages are related to each other in a single language family. We say they're in the same family if they come from the same original source language. For example, the Romance languages are all derived from Latin. This is a linguistic result of the wide influence of the Roman Empire. Often, there's no direct information about the ancestor language because most ancient languages were never written down. But the family relationship between languages can be established by identifying relationships between their words and sounds. Linguists can then reconstruct aspects of the common ancestral languages that they came from. There are written records in Latin, the ancestor of the Roman languages, so the family relationship is easy to establish. But there are no written records of the ancestors of the Germanic or the Celtic languages. Linguists have worked to analyse these languages and have established that they are in fact descendants of an original Germanic language and Celtic language. Today, several hundred unrelated language families in the world have been recognised, but the exact relationships between languages and subgroups are regularly questioned and reassessed. Most of the world's languages can be grouped into 40 or 50 major language families. These major families are ones that have a large number of languages and/or a large number of speakers. There are only a few dozen languages that are isolates, so languages that can't be shown to be related to any other language, for example Basque in southwestern France and northeastern Spain. The top 4 major language families are Indo-European with over 2 billion speakers, Sino-Tibetan with well over 1 billion speakers, Niger-Congo which has 500 million speakers, and Afro-Asiatic with 250 million speakers. The Indo-European language family is very large and includes most of the languages of Europe, but it also extends beyond Europe. Many of the languages in Western Asia, like Persian in Iran, Pashto in Afghanistan and Kurdish, and of the northern half of the Indian subcontinent, such as Hindi or Urdu, Punjabi and Bengali, are all Indo-European languages. European colonial expansion in the last few centuries has also taken Indo-European languages around the world, and in many regions outside Europe they're spoken as the first language by most of the population, like in North and South America and Australia. So let's have a look at the language families in the region of Australia. The 3 main linguistic groupings in this region are Australian, so Aboriginal languages, Austronesian and Papuan. The region has some of the greatest linguistic diversity in the world, containing about 1,600 languages, a quarter of all languages. Australian Aboriginal languages belong to a single language family because research has concluded that they are descended from a common ancestor language. At the time of colonisation by Europeans in 1788, there were around 260 Aboriginal languages, and today about 145 are still spoken. Very few of these remaining languages are spoken by more than a few hundred people, and many by only a handful of elderly people. Half have fewer than 10 speakers. Only 18 Australian languages are being learned by children today, which means that the rest will be extinct when the current generation dies out. A small handful of Aboriginal languages are spoken by over 1,000 people. The largest Aboriginal languages, with more than 2,000 speakers, each with several dialects, are Western Desert in Central Australia with 5,800 speakers, Kala Lagau Ya from the Western Torres Strait Islands with 3,000 to 4,000 speakers, Walpiri from Central Australia with 3,000 speakers, and Eastern Arrernte in Central Australia as well, with 2,175 speakers. The Australian language family has several branches. Across most of Australia, the languages belong to one branch called Parmaniyungan. This includes all of Australia except the top end, the far north of the Northern Territory in Western Australia. So the yellow part on the map is all the Parmaniyungan languages. The other languages belong to about a dozen branches that get grouped together as non-Parmaniyungan, but these branches are not more closely related to each other. So there are about a dozen branches of the language family Australia, of which Parmaniyungan is one. In Tasmania, the indigenous language-speaking population was destroyed so quickly that very little is known about the languages there. It's thought that there were between 8 and 12 languages spoken in Tasmania, but so little is known about these languages that it's not clear how they were related to each other, and there's no evidence that they were related to the mainland languages. Because there's no evidence that they are not related to other Australian languages, they're assumed to be members of the Australian family. A very large and important language family in the region of Australia is Austronesian. These languages all belong to a single family and are descended from a common ancestor language. Today, there are more than 1,200 Austronesian languages spoken, with about 300 million speakers. Austronesian languages are the indigenous languages of Taiwan, not the Chinese majority, the Philippines, a few coastal points on the mainland of Southeast Asia, mainly in Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, many coastal areas of the island of New Guinea, much of the island of Papua New Guinea, Melanesia, so Bougainville, Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, New Caledonia and Fiji, Polynesia, including New Zealand, Samoa, Tonga, Hawaii and Easter Island, Micronesia and Madagascar. Almost all speakers of Austronesian languages speak various languages of the Western Austronesian branches, mainly in Indonesia, Malaysia and the Philippines. Many languages of Indonesia and the Philippines have several million speakers. Javanese has about 75 million speakers. But there are many Austronesian languages with only a few thousand or even only a few hundred speakers. The Oceanic Branch of Austronesian, so Papua New Guinea, Melanesia, Polynesia and most of Micronesia, has hundreds of languages but includes less than 2 million speakers in total. For example, Vanuatu has about 105 languages with a total population of about 150,000 speakers. The term Papuan refers to a group of languages that are in the same region and of the same type, but it's made up of at least 60 separate language families. There are more than 750 Papuan languages in the group. Papuan languages are spoken on the island of New Guinea, which comprises the nation of Papua New Guinea plus the Indonesian province of West Papua, also parts of some of New Guinea's offshore islands, parts of some islands of eastern Indonesia, including parts of Timor, and some parts of the Solomon Islands. About 5 million people speak a Papuan language, but most are spoken by only a few hundred people or a few thousand at the most. Only 3 are spoken by more than 100,000 people. The largest Papuan family is Trans-New Guinea, found across most of mainland New Guinea. It has about 500 languages, including several large languages like Engen and Chimbu. Another large family is Sipik Ramu, with about 100 languages, all spoken by small numbers of people. Another large Papuan family is Torricelli, with about 50 languages, also spoken by small numbers of people. So let's look at some other major language families. Firstly, Uralic. So Hungarian is not an Indo-European language, but belongs to the Ugric branch of the Uralic family. Finnish, Estonian and some smaller European languages belong to the Finnic branch, which is also part of the Uralic family. Most Uralic languages are spoken further east in Siberia. Then we have Altaic. So Turkish is the most westerly member of the Turkic branch of the Altaic family. That also includes other languages of Central Asia, like Azerbaijani and Uzbek, and some as far east as Western China, such as Uyghur. Other branches of Altaic include Mongolian. The languages of southern India belong to the Dravidian family, including Tamil, Telugu, and Malayalam. The Sino-Tibetan family has two main branches. Sinitic contains the main languages of China, such as Mandarin, Cantonese, and Hakka. Tibeto-Burman contains languages such as Tibetan, Burmese, and Karen. Japanese and Korean are not definitely known to be related to each other or any other language, but many people think they're distantly related to Altaic. Ainu is the indigenous pre-Japanese language of the Japanese islands, and it is an isolate. The largest language family of Africa is Niger-Congo. Most people in sub-Saharan Africa speak a Niger-Congo language. The biggest and most important branch is Bantu, with languages such as Swahili, Zulu, Rwanda, and Xhosa. Other branches include languages like Igbo, Yoruba, and Fulani in Nigeria, and Akan in Ghana. The Afro-Asiatic family is found throughout North Africa, Northeast Africa, and the Middle East. One important branch is Semitic, which contains Arabic, Hebrew, Maltese, and Aramaic. Other branches include languages such as Berber, Hausa, Somali, Coptic, and Ancient Egyptian. The Nilo-Saharan family is located in East Central Africa and contains languages such as Nubian. The Khoisan family is located in Southwest Africa and includes the so-called click languages. There are quite a few language families in Southeast Asia. One is Austroasiatic, including languages such as Vietnamese and Khmer or Cambodian. Another is Thai Kadai, including languages such as Thai and Laotian. Now we'll look at the Americas. North, Central and South America contain many indigenous language families. Some families in North and Central America include Eskimo-Aleut, with languages in the Arctic, including in Northeast Asia, such as Greenland Inuit and Yupik. Algonquin, with languages such as Blackfoot, Cheyenne and Cree. Nardine, with languages such as Navajo and Apache. Hokan-Siouan, with languages such as Mohawk and Sioux. Aztec-Tanoan, with languages such as Comanche and Nahuatl. And Mayan, with languages such as Tzeltal and K'iche'. There are many language families in South America, and not much is known about some of them. Some of the better-known families include Quechuan, with descendants of the languages of the Incas, such as Quechua, and Carib, with the indigenous languages of the Caribbean. Languages that belong to the same language family often have similarities in their grammar, which makes sense because they have inherited a lot of their grammar from the original ancestor language. But languages that are not of the same family can also resemble each other for other reasons. Languages in the same geographical area can resemble each other even though they may not be members of the same language family. This happens because languages that are in contact with each other can influence each other over time. For example, in some coastal regions of Vietnam, some small Austronesian languages belonging to the Chamic subgroup of Austronesian are interspersed among Vietnamese, which is an unrelated Austroasiatic language. Many speakers of Chamic languages are bilingual with Vietnamese. Most Chamic languages have many grammatical characteristics that look more like Vietnamese than their Austronesian relatives elsewhere. On the island of Bougainville, communities living side by side speak languages belonging to the Austronesian and two separate Papuan families, and many people are bilingual. Many Papuan languages have the word order subject, object, verb, so SOV. Most Austronesian languages are either VSO or SVO, but some Austronesian languages have the same order SOV as their Papuan neighbours. Some Bantu languages are spoken in areas of southern Africa close to where the Khoisan languages are spoken, and they've developed cliques. Similarities like these are due to mutual borrowing and influence and do not necessarily indicate that the languages are in the same family. This kind of influence of one language on another can lead to convergence of languages in a particular area. One example of convergence is the Balkans. Greek, Bulgarian, Albanian and Serbo-Croat are only distantly related, but they share many features. Also in central India, where there are two completely separate language families, Indo-European and Dravidian, the languages share many features in common.